As we open up our Bibles to Isaiah, maybe you have the feeling of dread or confusion about studying the Old Testament. Hopefully I've removed a lot of that from us. As we open up this book, it's not just telling us about all of these things that those horrible people, the Jews, the Israelites, did that we would never do. Hopefully we never have that kind of mentality or that kind of mindset. Hopefully as we open it, we see the connection to ourselves. We understand that the things that these followers, these children of God are falling into are very similar to the types of things that we also can easily fall into. In the case of what we're going to be studying about tonight, we're going to be picking up where we left off. You remember earlier in chapter 7, we noticed how first of all, Ahaz was struggling. He's terrified. Him and all the people with him are shaking in terror because the northern nations above them, Israel and Syria, were coming up against them. And they were terrified. They didn't know what to do. And so God sends his prophet Isaiah and tells them, don't be worried. Don't worry about it. I'm going to take care of you. And I'm going to provide for you. And these two nations are no longer going to exist. By the time a child will be born whose name is Emmanuel, and he grows up old enough to know how to choose what's good and refuse what's evil, by that time, those two nations are going to cease to exist. And Ahaz, of course, is told, ask for a sign. And he doesn't ask. He says, I'm not going to put the Lord to the test. And God tells him that's the sign. Emmanuel is going to be born. But then after all of that takes place, we see that God's response is, you're wearying me. Why are you wearying me? Why are you constantly fighting against me and not trusting me? And as we come to verse 17, we see that he's making it very clear they're going to receive judgment for this. Verse 17 beginning, it says, the Lord will bring upon you and upon your people and upon your father's house such days as have not come since the day that Ephraim departed from Judah, the king of Assyria. That's kind of odd at the end there, the king of Assyria. Why? That seems almost out of place. But notice the first part. The Lord is going to bring upon you and upon your people such days that have not come since the day that Ephraim departed from Judah. This is giving us an indication of judgment. There's going to be a judgment against these people because they have not trusted in God. Instead, they've chosen to trust in Assyria. And so what he says is going to happen is it's going to be like the days when Ephraim, Israel, the northern 10 tribes, separated itself from Judah. Can you imagine being a nation that's huge, that's the largest nation on earth, and then all of a sudden 5/6 of the tribes leave and disconnect themselves. You see how many people they would have lost seemingly in an instant. And God is making it clear the same kind of thing is about to happen among you. You're about to lose the majority of your population. And then he says very clearly, the king of Assyria. What's fascinating is that statement almost seems like it comes out of nowhere, but that statement is the answer, Ahaz's answer to his problem. Those nations that have come up against him, Israel and Syria, are going to be handled by not trusting in God, but trusting in the nation of Assyria to provide all of the salvation that they're looking for. And so Isaiah is beginning a warning and a judgment against Judah because of this evil. Look at verse 18. It says, in that day, the Lord will whistle for the fly that is at the end of the streams of Egypt, and for the bee that is at the land of Assyria, and they will all come and settle in the steep ravines and in the clefts of the rock, and on all the thorn bushes and on all the pastures. And that day the Lord will shave with a razor that is hired beyond the river with the king of Assyria, the head and the hair of the feet, and it will sweep away the beard also. In that day a man will keep alive a young cow and 2 sheep, because of the abundance of milk that they give, he will eat curds. For everyone who is left in the land will eat curds and honey. In that day, every place where there used to be 1,000 vines worth 1,000 shekels of silver will become briars and thorns. With bows and arrows, a man will come there, for all the land will be briars and thorns. And as for all the hills that used to be hoed with a hoe, you will not come there for fear of briars and thorns, but they will become a place where the cattle are let loose and where sheep tread. As we're reading this section of Isaiah chapter 7, you're not probably connecting too much with the judgments that are coming, and maybe some of those are seeming a little bit difficult. Notice, all of this is referring to some kind of desolation or destruction. The plagues are being talked about, these flies coming. It sounds very similar to the plagues in Egypt, and then the bees coming, and bees would have been the insect coming from Assyria. They were known for having all kinds of bee, farms and such like that. So all of these insects are coming in and swarming, and that is usually a picture of judgment. Then he's going to bring the razor that is hired, and he says that's the king of Assyria. That's the razor that's hired. Remember, Ahaz hired Assyria to come and kill Israel and Syria. And he says, I'm going to take that razor and you're going to be shaved with it. Now, the shaving of hair, of the beard, and of the feet, which is just an idiom, a figure of speech for that day for private parts and stuff like that. So all of that shaving, though, is indicating humiliation that's going to happen as a result of this sin and the evil that they've done. And then keeping a cow and 2 sheep alive is because they don't have crops growing. They just have these animals to keep up with. And the animals have plenty of pasture land to go out in because there's not many people to tend to the pasture land. So they've got tons of these animals, and so it's kind of ironic that they've got all this curds and honey in a land that's full of devastation and desolation. And then you've got a picture of briars and thorns. If you know your Old Testament, you know back in the beginning, a curse that was placed on Adam and Eve was that briars and thorns would come up from the ground. So whenever you see briars and thorns mentioned in judgment, it's referring to the curse. And so all of this is really pointing to the idea that judgment is coming upon Judah because of this sin, because they have trusted in Assyria for their security. And the picture is that there's no economic security apart from God. And you trusting in Assyria is not going to help you, but instead it's going to hurt you. And you're going to receive judgment for this, for what you've done. And all this, as you study it, you see the very strict judgment from God that he's not okay with Judah going to Assyria to find help. He's not okay with them allying themselves with an evil and wicked nation whenever God has told them, I am with you, I will be with you, and I will destroy those enemies of yours. Instead, Ahaz, the king, has decided to go after Assyria. And so as we look at this and we think, oh, okay, well, how does any of this have anything to do with me, right? Like, why are we learning about this judgment of Judah because of their mistrust in Assyria? Well, what's our Assyria? What do we bank on? What do we put our trust in this world, in this life, to provide us with security, with stability, with protection? How do we feel about God's promises to be with us? How do we feel about the promises of those in this world? Who do we ally ourselves with? What do we put our faith and our trust in to provide everything? Notice here very clearly there's a statement of judgment against Judah for trusting not in God, but in themselves and in Assyria. As we continue in chapter 8, we see more judgment coming. And this is interesting. He gives another sign, and he changes the sign that he gave before. But look, he takes a literal sign in this. So verse 1 beginning, it says, Then the Lord said to me, now Isaiah is saying that, take a large tablet and write on it in common characters, belonging to Maher-shalal-Hashbaz. And I will get reliable witnesses, Uriah the priest and Zechariah the son of Jeberechiah, to attest for me. And I went to the prophetess, and she conceived and bore a son. And then the Lord said to me, call his name Maher-shalal-hash-baz. For before the boy knows how to cry, my father or my mother, the wealth of Damascus and the spoil of Samaria will be carried away before the king of Assyria. The Lord spoke to me again. Because this people has refused the waters of Shiloah that flow gently, and rejoice over Rezin and the son of Remaliah. Therefore, behold, the Lord is bringing up against them the waters of the river, mighty and many, the king of Assyria and all his glory, and it will rise over all its channels and go over all its banks, and it will sweep on into Judah. It will overthrow and pass on, reaching even to the neck, and its outspread wings will fill the breadth of your land, O Emmanuel. So here you have a change in the sign. Notice again, very clearly, there's judgment against Judah because they have chosen Assyria. And he says, now there's another child that's going to be born. He says, this is going to be indicated by a sign. He takes a scroll and he writes on it, belonging to Maher-shalal-hash-baz. And he puts it up and he shows it to other people that this belongs to Maher-shalal-hash-baz. And then he goes to his wife and she bears him a son. And they call his name Maher-shalal-hash-baz. And you're wondering, what kind of name is that? And if you were there in that day and you heard somebody call their son Maher-shalal-hash-baz, you would have been saying, what kind of name is that? And it's very interesting. It means that there's speed to the spoil, hasten to the plunder, the booty, the plunder. And it's all an indication of the plundering that's about to happen in Syria and Israel. Notice he says that Assyria is going to carry off the spoil of those nations. And that's exactly what this person's name, this boy's name, is going to indicate. That by the time this boy can say my father or my mother, which is probably going to be a year or so, by that time, those two nations are going to be destroyed and plundered. I said it's a very interesting sign because earlier we had the sign of Emmanuel that said by the time that boy is old enough to know the difference between what's good and what's right, what's bad, those nations are going to be destroyed. But now it seems as though that's going to happen even earlier. Before this child cries, my father, these two nations are going to be plundered. That's very interesting to me. So God is replacing the sign of God is with us with the sign of the plunder is going to be quickly taken away. Okay? Then it kind of changes from that picture to explain what he's talking about and why this is a judgment against Judah. Notice verse 5. Because this people has refused the waters of Shiloah that flow gently, and rejoice over Rezin and the son of Remaliah. All right, so the waters that flow gently are representing God bringing judgment. That's gentle waters coming in, not hurting anyone, but clearing out all the debris, clearing out all the enemies. And he says, this is what you've done. You've rejected that gentle stream, and you've chosen this raging river, the king of Assyria. And he says, since you've done that, I'm going to bring that flood all the way up to you and to your doorstep. All the way up to your neck is what he says. And this is exactly what Assyria does. They come into the land and they destroy fortified city after fortified city, all the way up to an encampment around the walls of Jerusalem. And so they become this massive force of destruction for the people of Judah. And so all of this is again indicating that there's a judgment for turning against God and pursuing Assyria. And in all of this, again, if you're wondering, how does this apply to us? Well, think. What blessings have been promised to us? The sign of Emmanuel, yeah, it's been given to us. And are we willing to trade the blessings for the burden? Because the burden is so easily attained, right? Assyria is real and physical and in front of them, and their power is known, and their gods apparently produce great armies that are able to conquer everyone. And so are you going to put your trust in them and think that you're going to be blessed, or are you going to put your trust in God? And if you put your trust in them, you see the picture is they're not going to stop whenever they destroy your enemies. Whenever they make things a little bit easier for you, a little bit better for you, they're going to come for you. And they're going to take what you greatly love and desire, whatever that is. Now, as we think about what can our Assyria be and how do we exchange the blessing for the burden, just think about your choices in life. The jobs that you pursue, the relationships that you pursue. Think about what you're trusting in as you're pursuing those things. Why are you pursuing those things? Is there a desire for God to be glorified in your work in those areas? Or is there a desire for God to be glorified as you grow closer to this person in this relationship? Or are you kind of trusting in them to provide something you don't think God is providing you? Have they become your Assyria? Has the job become your Assyria? Has it become your security blanket that's going to make everything better and make you feel good? Well, the picture is that what we see could be a blessing can turn into a curse, can turn into something that destroys us instead of really helps us. And so he's really calling for us to make wise decisions, decisions that put our faith and our trust in God, not in things that will never provide what God is going to provide. Ahaz decided to go for Assyria because it was the logical thing to do. It was reasonable. It made sense. All of his counselors backed him up, saying, this is a great move. This is going to help you. You're going to be so successful in all of your endeavors. If you got them as an ally, everything's going to go very well for you. But they were never equals. Instead, the Assyrians became oppressors. They became a burden instead of the blessing that Ahaz was hoping for. And that can happen to us in many different ways, in many different times in our lives. And the people that we befriend and the people we confide in, the people we trust in, we need to be aware of the power and the impact that they can have on our lives to destroy us. We need to be very careful in those choices, to be sure that we're putting our trust in God and not in people, that we're not trying to find relief from our struggles through things and people that are not godly and that are not going to help us to trust more in God. Maybe that's one of the hardest things we ever face in life, as all those around us are encouraging us to live in a way that doesn't put trust in God. We'll have to choose to put trust in God and not in men. Well, it's not all doom and gloom. As we move forward, we see that there is hope. This picture of judgment against God's people is never a pretty picture throughout the Old Testament, but God always brings in some kind of hope, and we've seen this throughout the book of Isaiah. He wants to reassure those who've remained faithful. Even though the nation's about to go through tremendous suffering and persecution, God is still going to be with them. And you got a hint of that there at the end of verse 8. Notice he refers to Judah as Emmanuel. He says, it will sweep into Judah, it will overflow and pass on, reaching even to the neck, and its outspread wings will fill the breadth of your land, O Emmanuel. And so he starts the promise section with addressing them as Emmanuel, as God's people, as the nation is God with us. God is still with them even though they have sinned. But now he starts talking about the remnant. And he brings up the fact that there's going to be a remnant who, if they remain faithful, God will still be with them. He will shatter their enemies, and he will give them peace and hope in times ahead. Verse 9, be broken, you peoples. Be shattered. Give ear, all you far countries. Strap on your armor and be shattered. Strap on your armor and be shattered. Take counsel together, but it will come to nothing. Speak a word, but it will not stand. For God is with us. The Lord spoke thus with me, with his strong hand upon me, and warned me not to walk in the way of this people, saying, do not fear, or do not call conspiracy all that this people calls conspiracy. Do not fear what they fear, nor be in dread. But the Lord of hosts, him you shall honor as holy. Let him be your fear, and let him be your dread. And he will become a sanctuary, and a stone of offense, and a rock of stumbling to both houses of Israel, a trap and a snare to the inhabitants of Jerusalem. And many shall stumble on it. They shall fall and be broken. They shall be snared and taken. Bind up the testimony. Seal the teaching among my disciples. And then he says, I will wait for the Lord, who is hiding his face from the house of Jacob, and I will hope in him. Behold, I and the children whom the Lord has given me are signs and portents in Israel from the Lord of hosts, who dwells in Mount Sion. So you see in all of this that there's this remnant that is going to be still living, that God is going to be with. And in this society that is completely determined to go away from God and to trust in Assyria and to trust in idols, there are going to be some who are still trusting in him, and God knows who they are. And God is going to provide for them. He's going to protect them as they come together and take counsel about how to destroy all of God's people. God is going to protect them. Then he tells them something interesting. He says, do not call conspiracy what they call conspiracy. Do not fear what they fear. And you get the sense that Ahaz is buying into all the conspiracies. He's buying into all the fears. He's this guy that is just totally terrified on every account. And what God is telling his people is, you don't have to be afraid of anything. If I'm for you, who can stand against you? Sounds like Romans 8. This picture of God is with you. You don't have to be terrified of all the things that they're terrified of. He says God is going to be your sanctuary. He's going to be the place you can go to for safety, for comfort, for security. And he's going to be a stone of stumbling for all of those who reject him. All of those who are unwilling to put their trust in him will stumble and they'll be snared. Now skip down to chapter 9, verse 1. There's more discussion about the struggles of those who are the remnant in chapter 8, but I want to get us into chapter 9 tonight. So chapter 9, verse 1 says, more words of hope. But there will be no gloom for her who was in anguish. In the former time he brought into contempt the land of Zebulun and the land of Naphtali, but in the latter time he has made glorious the way of the sea, the land beyond the Jordan, Galilee of the nations. The people who walked in darkness have seen a great light. Those who dwelt in a land of deep darkness, on them has light shone. You have multiplied the nation. You have increased its joy. They rejoice before you as with joy at the harvest, as they are glad when they divide the spoil. For the yoke of his burden and the staff on his shoulder, the rod of his oppressor, you have broken, as on the day of Midian. For every boot of the trampling warrior in battle tumult and every garment rolled in blood will be burned as fuel for the fire. For to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government shall be on his shoulders, and his name shall be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Of the increase of his government and of peace there will be no end. On the throne of David and over his kingdom, to establish it and to uphold it with justice and with righteousness, from this time forth and forevermore. The zeal of the Lord of hosts will do this. You see how the words of hope for his remnant have kind of transitioned into a time of great prosperity and joy and peace. As he says, light is going to shine again. There's a picture of dark days ahead as God is bringing this judgment against his people, but he calls to a time when the light is going to shine again in the land of the Gentiles, in the land of Zebulun and Naphtali, a land that's already overtaken by Gentile nations. He says there's going to be a light that shines once again. If you go to Matthew in chapter 4, you're going to see this very prophecy being pointed out as saying this is Jesus coming into Zebulun and Naphtali and preaching. The Emmanuel promise that we read about back in chapter 7, it remains. He changed out the signs of the sons from Emmanuel to Maher-shalal-hash-baz, and now he's coming back around to this picture of Emmanuel, and he's saying it's still going to hold true, but it's just not going to be right now. It's going to happen in the future. And that's very much what we see. Notice that the name is given to a son, a child that's being born. And instead of Emmanuel, it describes him as God being with him, or him being God. The government will be on his shoulders. His name will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. This king, this child that is born, is going to be God, and he's going to be ruling over the kingdom. And that's a statement of Jesus. Jesus is going to bring this eternal peace. He's the Prince of Peace. And he's going to rule over the kingdom of David and uphold it and establish it with justice, with righteousness, and make it what no king has ever been able to make it. A nation that is pleasing in God's sight, that puts its trust and its faith fully in God. And so all of this is telling us about the failure of Judah to put their trust in God, while at the same time promising a future hope of salvation coming from God for all the remnant who will choose to put their trust in him. All right, so overall it's a beautiful picture. It's a lot to digest. There's a whole lot in here. But hopefully you can see the core message. And hopefully we can learn the main lesson of Ahaz's failure, that idolatry is not the solution to our problems. In our lives, we're given multiple opportunities to find peace and to find rest and to find comfort in things of this world. Aren't we? I mean, every day, right? I mean, we've got a TV. We can just turn that thing on. We can zone out. We got our cell phones. We can just look to them to give us peace of mind and comfort and rest and security. We've got our jobs, we've got our relationships, we've got our country and our governments. I mean, we've got all kinds of things to give us securities. But as we study this, we see that we have to be very careful not to trade God for those securities. Ahaz took God from being on the throne, took him off, and put Assyria on the throne. Said, God, I know that you said you wanted me to do this, but I think it's more wise and logical to do that. I think it's going to give me the quick fix that I'm looking for. I think it's going to give me the instant gratification that I'm looking for. I think it's going to give me control back over my kingdom and over my life if I just put Assyria on the throne and just take you and set you over to the side for just a little bit. We're dethroning God. Whenever we set any of these things in our life up to be the source of satisfaction and security and hope, we're dethroning God. And that sets us up, unfortunately, for disaster. Whatever that is, whatever the idol is that you're putting up in your life, it can become a source of pain for you whenever it falls short of whatever it is you thought it would be. They thought Assyria was going to be this great ally that would lead to them having such peace and prosperity, and then it turned against them. They should have known better than to trust this ungodly nation, but they instead pursued them with all their heart, and they were gravely mistaken. Do you know people who've done similar? I bet you do. I bet we all know people who have put their trust in an individual, maybe as a relationship. They decided to marry someone, not really a particularly godly person or focused on God at all, and the result was disastrous in many cases. We know people who have decided to pursue a certain career path that was going to just take them away from God just a little bit, and it just resulted in devastation. They just got distracted. They thought that the job was the main thing. But God is the main thing. So what is it that you're pursuing in your life? I'll tell you, I thought marriage was going to satisfy every desire and every struggle in life. I lifted Jenna up and I put her right there on the throne, and she's a wonderful wife, wonderful person. Y'all know her. But she's a terrible God. She's a terrible God. And I'm sure I am too if she'd have done that. I don't think she did that, though. But that's what we do. We put somebody or something up there, and we expect more out of them than they're ever going to be able to provide us. And God is just sitting there saying, what are you doing? That's supposed to be me. I'm supposed to be your everything. And so the world around us is going to do this. We're going to see people doing this all around us all the time, and they're going to look at us like we're crazy if we put our trust fully in God. And yet that's exactly what God is calling for all of us to do. So as we look at this text, we see Ahaz choosing to rely on Assyria for security, but instead of security, they give him a bunch of pain and heartache, and we got to be careful not to do the same thing. God offers us the same kind of help, the same kind of love, and the kind of peace that we see him offering to his people here in Isaiah. And we have to just be careful not to replace God with other things, but instead trust him. Look to him for the satisfaction, for the peace, and don't lose hope. Don't start to fear what everyone else around you is fearing. Don't fear missing out on something. And don't pursue something with selfish ambition like we talked about this morning, or bitter jealousy, thinking that that's going to be the thing that gives me everything I ever want. And if I don't have that, then I'm going to fail and life's going to be horrible. Don't be afraid of that kind of stuff. Instead, remember, God is with us. Hold his hand. Ask for him to hold your hand. All the songs. Ask, let me see you, Jesus. Let me know you. Let me feel your presence. Let me experience your love in the lives of those around me, working in my life and helping to build me up and to encourage me. And we need to grow closer to one another because we are the remnant who do not fit into the society that's all around us. Everybody out there is looking to idols. They're not called idols, but they are idols. And they're looking to those things to provide them everything they need. But we all look to God, and we trust in him. And so join yourself with those of like mind and like faith, and find the encouragement that you need to trust in God when times are tough. Because times are going to get tough. If you live long enough, times are going to get tough. And it's always better to have someone at your side encouraging you to pray, encouraging you to read, reminding you of Scripture, than it is to have somebody by your side who gives up hope because the idol didn't work. It's not a person that's going to help you. If you're trusting in things, they're not going to help you when they're taken away or they dissolve, because things, they go away. They don't last. And so we need to be very careful. Make sure that we're not trading God for anything else. Put your trust fully in him and find the salvation and find the hope that you're looking for. If you're here tonight and you're in need of help from God, help from us in any way, we want to encourage you, help you in any way that we can. Please let us know what you need. Please come as we stand and as we sing.